welcome to a special Pray Vote Stand. I'm your host, Tony Perkins, president of Family Research Council and FRC Action in our nation's capital. Next Tuesday, November the 8th, voters will go to the polls and vote in the 2022 midterm elections. Now, what's significant about this? Well, this election is the first chance the citizens of America will have to communicate directly to the leadership of our country if they approve or disapprove of the direction that President Biden and the Democrat-controlled Congress have taken the nation in the last 2 years. Now, here is what folks should be asking themselves as they go to the polls and vote. Are we better off morally, spiritually, economically than we were 2 years ago? There is a lot at stake in this election, I think more than most realize. It is a battle for the soul of our children, who are being indoctrinated and led astray by the president and those advancing a godless, immoral agenda. This election will determine whether this assault on the family and on morality in America and the law continues, or if it is checked by a new congressional majority. This battle for the soul of our nation is reason to pray for our nation and why we gather tonight. Now, recent polls predict a red wave that will sweep Republicans to control the House and possibly the Senate next week. But that sounds nice. But keep in mind, polls don't vote. People do. It is absolutely essential that you vote and that you encourage other believers to vote for biblical values and those candidates who most clearly align with those values.
I wrote a very short book. It's called Letter to the American Church. And what it says in a nutshell is that where we are now in America, and I say this with tremendous gravity, there's just no way around this, where we are now in America is because of the silence of the American church on all of these issues that we ought to be shouting about. And it parallels precisely the silence of the German church in the 1930s. Because I wrote a book on Dietrich Bonhoeffer, I know about that period. And when the German church was silent in the 1930s, they didn't realize that their silence would lead to satanic horrors. They just thought, oh, well, we're just the church. We just want to stay in our lane. We just want to preach the gospel. We don't want to go up against, we don't want to get political. And they kept their mouths shut when God was asking them to speak and to be bold and to live out their faith boldly. They were silent. And once they woke up, it was too late. And I'm saying in this book, Letter to the American Church, that the American church now is guilty of exactly the same thing. There are pastors and Christian leaders across this country that are being deadly silent on issues of profound concern to every single American. And they have some idea that, well, maybe Romans 13, or they have some idea that they shouldn't be political. And I think to myself, this is madness. In the issue, in the days of slavery, we didn't say, well, don't take a position on that because that's a political issue. You said this is an issue of evil versus good, and you better open your mouth against this satanic evil, because if you don't, you are giving comfort to those who are in the slave trade, who are benefiting from this evil. You need to speak up if you're a man or a woman of God. And, of course, in those days, there were people that said, well, I don't want to take position. There are people in my congregation who will get offended at this or that. We would condemn them, and we would say, well, of course they should have spoken against that. Exactly the same thing happened in Germany. All kinds of people told Bonhoeffer and company, keep your mouth shut. Don't get involved in politics. There's people on both sides of this issue. Just stick to the gospel. And Bonhoeffer knew that if the church in Germany does not boldly speak against the evil that is happening, before they even knew where it was going, that it was going to be real evil, when they just saw that things were wrong, he said, if they don't speak up, the church is the only hope in this nation to stand against Nazism. And the church dithered and had excuses, and by the time they understood, many of them, many good men got this wrong, and by the time they woke up, it was too late. And my thesis is that that's precisely where we are in America today. There are tons of pastors and Christian leaders that are being silent on this, and a raft of horrible things that are happening. They should be screaming from the rooftops, and they're sending mixed messages. They're giving you the impression like, well, it doesn't matter which side you're on politically. And you think, wait, folks, this is not, Tip O'Neill is not the head of the Democratic Party. We have gone over into anti-American cultural Marxism. It's the enemy of liberty. It's the enemy of the church. If you don't speak up, God will hold you accountable. And so my